Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're taking a look at a truly monumental stack of source material articles, literary analysis, biographical context, and of course, the text itself. And it's all focused on George Orwell's final and, well, most famous work, 1984.
It really is.
We're not just, reading the book here. We're using these sources to really understand the terrifying architecture of Oshina and how this fictional world achieves and maintains absolute permanent power.
And this is a deep dive that's necessary, I think, not just for literary understanding, but for civic awareness.
Right.
The book is cited all the time, but its precise mechanisms of control, the structural integrity of the nightmare Orwell built, they're often misunderstood.
That's a great way to put it.
For a lot of people, this text is basically an instruction manual for totalitarianism, distilled into its purest, most chilling form.
Yeah.
So our goal today is to move beyond the plot of Winston Smith's, his doomed rebellion, and really dissect the specific tools the party uses to control not just the body, but reality itself.
We're unpacking the book's central pillars: the meticulous destruction of objective truth, the function of linguistic engineering through newspeak, and the paradoxical mental gymnastics of doublethink.
And the precise psychological engineering that's necessary to achieve what the party itself calls omnipotence.
Exactly. It's a terrifying journey into why Big Brother demands not just obedience, but absolute internalized love and the complete absorption of the individual mind.
And to really get at that psychological operation, we have to start with the physical environment. The setting it's absolutely fundamental to the psychological state of everyone in Oshina. We need to explore why a dictatorship would intentionally create universal filth and scarcity.
Okay, let's unpack the setting first then. The sources immediately drop us into this world of physical decay and omnipresent surveillance, Airstrip 1, formerly London. What strikes you about the world Winston Smith inhabits right from that opening line? The unforgettable image of the clocks were striking 13.
Well, the immediate atmosphere is just designed to be sensory, pervasive, and universally unpleasant. Orwell just bombards you with the texture of life. The boiled cabbage and old rag mat smell in the hallways, the gritty dust, and this feeling of constantly wearing leaky shoes and thin overalls.
It's so visceral.
It is. And the party enforces a state of universal, deliberate scarcity. Winston himself is described as this frail figure, suffering from chronic physical discomfort, especially that varicose ulcer above his ankle.
Which feels like a physical manifestation of the world's sickness.
That's it, exactly.
And his home, Victory Mansions, which we learned was built around 1930, it's just a ruin. His flat is 7 flights up because the lift is seldom working.
And we learned that's part of the economy drive in preparation for Hate Week.
Such a critical detail. The overall senses of this universal managed dilapidation. Rotting 19th century houses shored up with timber, bombed sites where willow herb is straggling over the rubble.
And this is all happening despite the constant blaring claims from the telescreen about the overfulfillment of the 9th three-year plan.
That contrast.
That contrast between the claimed reality and the physical reality that your body is experiencing is precisely the point. The scarcity isn't just because of wartime mismanagement. It's a deliberate psychological tool.
Right.
Nothing is cheap or plentiful except, that synthetic gin, the saccharin tablets, and those awful Victory cigarettes that are so loosely packed, the tobacco just spills out.
So that chronic shortage, it increases the importance of tiny privileges.
It does, and it fosters a psychological state where the population feels constantly deprived and instinctively aggressive. And then the party channels that deprivation and aggression, which would otherwise turn against the state outwards.
Into war fever and hatred.
Exactly.
So the filth and the scarcity are a mechanism of control. They're diverting cognitive energy away from intellectual thought and into immediate physical concerns.
That's it. If you are constantly worried about where your next piece of coarse bread is coming from, or if your shoes will hold together, you are just. You're less likely to question the ideological claims of Big Brother.
It's a kind of managed, continuous stress.
A stress that prepares the population for the constant, necessary hate.
But the true innovation in this environment is the technology of surveillance. The telescreen, the ultimate symbol of Big Brother, with his face and that heavy black mustache on posters everywhere saying, "Big Brother is watching you."
The telescreen is the absolute most critical physical mechanism of control because it receives and transmits simultaneously.
A two-way street.
A two-way street. Winston notes you can dim it, but you can never, ever shut it off completely. What makes it so terrifying, and what the sources really emphasize, is that the exact workings of the thought police are left as guesswork.
Right. You don't know if they're watching you right now.
You don't know if they're watching everybody all the time or just, intermittently.
And that uncertainty is the critical psychological mechanism. It's the difference between knowing you're being watched and just the possibility you're being watched.
Yes. The sources note that Winston must live, and did live, from habit that became instinct, on the assumption that every sound above a whisper is overheard and every movement is scrutinized.
Except maybe in total darkness.
Maybe, and that is so much more effective than knowing you are always watched.
The psychological cost of that constant assumption must be immense.
It is. It explains why his very first act of rebellion, just opening his diary, is so terrifying and momentous for him.
And it's not actually illegal.
No. There are no longer any laws as such, but detection is reasonably certain to be punished by death or 25 years in a forced labor camp.
So the danger isn't the law. It's the inevitable, overwhelming response of the party to any kind of deviation. He's trapped, psychologically, in this state of locked loneliness.
This internal terror goes way beyond just conscious actions or spoken words. The party's control extends even to involuntary facial movements, which is a true innovation in dystopian thought and feels, well, it feels frighteningly resonant today with algorithms analyzing microexpressions.
Absolutely, this is thought crime.
Which literally is death.
And it's triggered not just by what you actively think, but by these subtle abnormalities like a nervous sciatic or an unconscious look of anxiety.
And they even have a specific newspeak word for it. Face crime.
Face crime. Wearing an improper expression, like looking incredulous when victory is announced.
Right, and this forces Winston to maintain an inscrutable face constantly, knowing that a single flicker of his eyes or a widening of his nostrils could give him away.
So if the telescreen is the mechanism, the fear of face crime is the psychological lever. It forces the citizen to internally endorse the party line, because any external sign of internal dissent, however subtle, can be detected.
Precisely. The paranoia created by the telescreen is total and it's pervasive. You can't even get up and walk around your own small apartment without knowing that someone, a nosing zealot, or potentially worse, an amateur spy, like the dark-haired girl, might be scrutinizing your every action, looking for that smallest suggestion of abnormality.
So the surveillance system isn't just about catching rebels.
No, it's designed to breed self-censorship to such an extreme that rebellion is choked off before it can even form into a thought.
It's a brilliant strategy, really. The analog technology of the telescreen, clunky as it is, achieves the same psychological effect as the most sophisticated digital surveillance we see discussed today.
Yeah. The physical discomfort and the omnipresent, uncertain watchfulness combine to ensure the individual is fundamentally unstable and just alone.
And this loneliness is key.
It is. As long as Winston believes he is the only person who feels this way, who questions the party's lies, he is powerless. The psychological landscape mirrors the physical decay. Both are inescapable, pervasive, and intentionally built to break down the individual's sense of safety and community.
And this forced isolation is the prerequisite for the party's next great move, controlling the past.
Exactly. That's a crucial pivot. If physical decay is the environment, then the party's job is to ensure our historical memory of a better past decays just as fast.
So let's move from the physical reality of Oceania to the Ministry of Truth.
Minute-True, where Winston works in the records department, and by deliberate doublethink, Minute-True is, of course, the Ministry of Lies. And his job is the systematic, bureaucratic falsification of history. The sources stress just how enormous and continuous this task is.
Let's detail this process, because it's so chillingly methodical and bureaucratic and just, utterly relentless. They don't just omit inconvenient facts.
No, they actively invent and replace historical reality hour after hour, day after day.
And Winston's work is called rectifying past issues of the times.
Rectifying. It's relentless and it's minute. For example, he gets a message telling him to alter a speech Big Brother made the day before. Big Brother had confidently predicted that the South Indian Front would remain quiet. But in reality, the Eurasian Higher Command launched a massive offensive there.
So Winston's task is to invent a new prediction.
A new speech that Big Brother must have given that correctly aligns with the current military situation. The complexity isn't in the lie itself, but in the need to destroy every single record of the original failed prediction.
And the actual administrative process of this physical erasure relies entirely on the memory hole.
Yes. Those oblong slits near his desk that send documents on a current of warm air to these enormous furnaces hidden deep in the building. The goal is the absolute destruction of the original copies.
Ensuring only the corrected orthodox documents are stored, and that the original heretical truth literally ceases to exist.
And beyond that, the party has to create history where absolutely none existed before. This is best illustrated by the specific fabrication of Comrade Ogilvy.
A piece of pure fantasy.
Pure fantasy. Winston dictates Ogilvy's entire life story in Big Brother's easily imitated military and pedantic style.
Right. Ogilvy joined the spies at 6, denounced his uncle at 11, designed a grenade that killed 31 Eurasian prisoners,
And died a hero at 23, leaping from a helicopter with his machine gun and dispatches to save the official documents.
The genius of this fictional creation is the psychological mechanism it reveals.
Yeah.
Winston reflects on it, right?
Mm.
He notes that Comrade Ogilvy, unimagined an hour ago, was now a fact.
Existing just as authentically and upon the same evidence as Charlemagne or Julius Caesar. It shows that objective history is nothing more than agreed-upon paperwork.
And this leads us to Winston's brief, terrifying encounter with true external reality, the Jones, Aronson, and Rutherford photograph.
This is arguably the most important scrap of paper in the entire novel because it just shatters the system for Winston, even if just for a moment.
That's the moment he possesses concrete, undeniable evidence of an act of falsification.
Absolutely. These three purged party leaders, they confessed at their public trial to treason, to being on Eurasian soil on a specific date.
But the photos showed them at a party function in New York on that exact same date.
So the confessions were undeniable lies extracted under torture.
And he's holding these three faces, frozen in time, that absolutely disprove the party's claims.
He holds that piece of paper, the only physical evidence he ever had, for maybe 30 seconds. But the sources note that he recognized instantly the futility of keeping it. Fear compelled him to drop it straight into the memory hole.
He knew that even if he resurrected it 5 years later, it would be useless.
Utterly useless, because the party would just rewrite the records again to say the photo was a forgery, or that New York was actually on Eurasian soil that day.
This is where his understanding crystallizes. He realizes the past doesn't just change, it changes continuously. The mutability of the past is the central tenet of Ingsoc.
Yes. The past is whatever the records and the collective memories agree upon. He writes in his diary, I understand how W. I do not understand WHY.
And he realizes that believing the past is unalterable is a sign of madness.
Or of being a lunatic, a minority of one.
If the party can control all records, they can only be challenged if someone can reliably compare the present with the past, which is why the proles are so fascinating.
They are. They're the low group, theoretically the last links with the past, the survivors from the time before the revolution, but they pose no threat.
So why does the party allow them relative freedom while controlling inner and outer party members so strictly?
Because the proles are useless for historical comparison. The sources detail Winston's attempt to get information from an old man in a pub, asking if life was better before the revolution.
And the old man, this remnant of the past, he can only remember these trivial, useless details.
Exactly. That the beer was cheaper and better, and he talks endlessly about the disappearance of top hats. When Winston tries to ask a political question about freedom, the old man's memory just offers up this rubbish heap of details.
So the question, was life better before the revolution, becomes unanswerable.
Yes, because the proles are incapable of comparing ages or grasping large ideological concepts, and the party controls all records and all inner and outer party memory.
So the parties claim that things are astronomically better, more food, more clothes, more babies, less disease. It just has to be accepted.
It has to be. There is no standard against which it can be tested. Winston realizes the party understands that you don't need to control the common man if the common man is incapable of comparing one age with another.
This control of the past, then, is total. It's the fundamental administrative mechanism that maintains the society's stability. It makes the ministry of truth just as necessary as the ministry of love.
But the destruction of the records is just. It's merely preparatory work for the destruction of the mind.
Right.
Indeed. The party realized that while falsifying the past is essential, securing the future requires preempting thought itself. They need to destroy the vocabulary needed for dissidence.
And that leads us to the true innovation, the weaponization of language.
If the physical world and historical records are controlled, the next target is consciousness itself, which the party seeks to reshape through Newspeak. This is the language of Ingsoc.
And its fundamental stated mission is far more radical than simple censorship.
Oh, absolutely. It's not just about stopping people from saying things. It's about making it literally impossible to think things.
Literally impossible.
Exactly. The aim of Newspeak, according to Syme, the dictionary compiler, is literally to narrow the range of thought.
And Syme is this terrifyingly enthusiastic figure.
He is. He explains that by destroying words, scores of them, hundreds of them every day, the party intends to make thought crime literally impossible because there will be no words left in which to express the heretical concept.
And he says the revolution will be complete when the language is perfect, around the year 2050.
With this chilling, almost mystical satisfaction.
You know, if you're listening, think about the depth of that ambition. It's not banning books. It's building a linguistic cage where the concepts of liberty, individualism, or justice just have no corresponding sounds.
And Syme explains the mechanical process of this destruction. It's brilliant in its simplicity. They just eliminate synonyms and antonyms.
Why have bad when ungood suffices?
Exactly. And why have excellent or splendid when plus good or double plus good covers the meaning? In the end, he says, the whole notion of goodness and badness will be covered by only 6 words.
Or, in reality, only 1 word.
He asks Winston, don't you see the beauty of that? Newspeak is a linguistic anomaly, the only language in the world whose vocabulary gets smaller every single year.
And this shrinking, compressed language ensures immediate political purity and rapid unconscious adherence to the party line. It bypasses the higher brain centers.
Yes, and we see this in the construction of the B vocabulary words, the political compounds.
Things like good think, mini packs, pro-leaf feeds, sex crime.
Joy camp, think poll. They're all short, clipped, and of unmistakable party-approved meaning. They're designed to be uttered rapidly, as automatically as a machine gun spraying forth bullets, because they prevent true cognitive engagement.
And this mechanical adherence is being given a positive name. Duck speak.
Duck speak. To quack like a duck. And it's a high compliment if the opinions being quacked are orthodox.
But the true conceptual horror lies in how the words they keep are purged of unorthodox meanings. The most stunning example is the word free.
The word free is retained, but it only applies physically. This dog is free from lice, or this field is free from weeds.
Right.
It can't be used in its old sense of politically free or intellectually free because those freedoms no longer exist, even as concepts.
So they're nameless, unimaginable.
Exactly. If you were to try and translate a passage like the one from the American Declaration of Independence about unalienable rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness into Newspeak,
What would happen?
the closest you could come to rendering the sense of the original would be to swallow the whole passage up in the single word crime-think.
The idea of liberty, which took centuries of philosophical development and thousands of words to define, is just reduced to a single condemnatory word, instantly negating the concept.
And that is the ultimate goal. To sever the last link with the past and ensure intellectual independence is biologically impossible. Since Newspeak is designed not to extend but to diminish the range of thought, all historical documents and literature, Shakespeare, Milton, Swift, have to be subjected to ideological translation.
They have to be rewritten or just destroyed before the transition to Newspeak is complete.
The party is future-proofing its totalitarianism.
This systematic control over language naturally forces us to the core mental process of party survival, the truly insane mental technique required for high-level political survival. Doublethink.
Doublethink is the truly frightening mechanism, described as reality control in old speak, and it's the price the party pays for its own omnipotence.
How exactly does one sustain 2 contradictory thoughts simultaneously without one just canceling out the other?
Well, doublethink is the power of holding 2 contradictory beliefs in one's mind simultaneously and accepting both. It is the necessary technique for any party intellectual.
And crucially, the process has to be conscious.
It has to be conscious because it needs to be carried out with sufficient precision, like altering historical memories and records, but it also has to be unconscious, or else it would bring with it a feeling of falsity and hence of guilt.
So the party intellectual has to simultaneously know they are lying, but also believe the lie with absolute fanatical fervor. That's the definition of functional insanity.
It lies at the very heart of INGSOC because the party must use conscious deception. They know they are falsifying the past and are currently fighting Astasia, even though they were fighting Eurasia yesterday, while somehow retaining the firmness of purpose that goes with complete honesty.
They are both cynical and fanatical at the same time.
And the sources explain this duality is best illustrated by the Newspeak term black-white.
Right.
Applying black-white to an opponent means impudently claiming black is white in contradiction of the plain facts. But applied to a party member, it means a loyal willingness to say and believe that black is white and to forget having ever believed the contrary.
So the party intellectual has to know in which direction their memories must be altered, which means they know they're playing tricks with reality.
But by exercising doublethink, they satisfy themselves that reality is not violated.
It's the ultimate mental checkmate. You have to use logic to determine what the new illogical truth is.
And this is why the sources point out that high-ranking party members, especially those in the inner party, are the subtlest practitioners of doublethink.
The greater their understanding of reality, and the fact that the perpetual war is a sham, that scarcity is manufactured, that Big Brother may not even exist,
The greater their necessary delusion, their mystical belief in Big Brother's omnipotence. They are the ones who are most nearly insane because they live in a state of constant managed paradox.
so the destruction of language and the enforcement of doublethink create the ideological framework. But the party also has to destroy the one remaining sanctuary for independent thought: intimate life.
Exactly. The party's structural control over the inner mind and external reality is cemented by its aggressive interference in the most intimate aspects of human existence, particularly sexual relationships and the family unit.
Because these are the spaces where independent loyalty and private reality might actually flourish.
They have to be stamped out.
Winston's initial ideological rebellion, his longing for a truth that exists independent of the party, 2 and 2 make 4, is immediately coupled with Julia's more practical physical rebellion.
Right. Their affair is explicitly a political counterpoint to party doctrine.
From the very start.
From the start, Winston feels that the sexual act, successfully performed, is rebellion. Desire itself is thought crime. The party cultivates this intensely puritanical atmosphere. Women of the party are conditioned by constant propaganda, the spies, the youth league. They are made to be impregnable, as the party intended that they should be.
What's fascinating is that Julia, who is much more pragmatic and less intellectual than Winston, provides the keenest sociological insight into why the party enforces this repression.
Her insight is brilliant. She sees the party's puritanism not as some accidental side effect of ideology, but as a functional necessity.
A tool.
A tool. Sexual privation induces hysteria, which can be instantly and easily transformed into war fever and leader worship.
She basically argues that satisfied people are poor revolutionaries.
Precisely. She says, when you make love, you're using up energy, and afterwards you feel happy and don't give a damn for anything. They can't bear you to feel like that. They want you to be bursting with energy all the time.
And she concludes that all this marching up and down and cheering and waving flags is simply sex gone sour.
There's a direct, intimate connection between forced chastity and political orthodoxy, which makes sex a political act of subversion.
Julia herself embodies a different type of rebellion than Winston. She's a rebel from the waist downwards, right? She's only concerned with the rules that touch her life.
Very much so. She is acutely aware of the practicalities of survival. Never going home the same way, getting black market inter-party goods, and maintaining an outward show of zealous conformity.
But she doesn't care about the why.
Not at all. When Winston tries to explain doublethink or the mutability of the past, the fact that the party had switched enemies from Eastasia to Eurasia only 4 years ago, she's just bored. She says, who cares? It's always one bloody war after another, and one knows the news is all lies anyway.
So her rebellion is personal, not political or philosophical.
And that difference highlights the two types of dissidents the party has to crush. The ideological, which is Winston, and the pragmatic, which is Julia.
And the party plays a similar, even darker trick with the instinct of parenthood. The family unit can't be abolished, but it is institutionally sabotaged and weaponized to make sure private loyalty can't take root.
Parenthood is inverted. Children are the party's most effective weapon.
We see this with the Parsons children.
Yes, who are members of the spies and are described as ungovernable little savages, but their ferocity is perfectly channeled outwards against the enemies of the state, against foreigners, traitors, and most importantly, against their own parents.
It's noted that it was almost normal for people over 30 to be frightened of their own children.
The family has effectively become an extension of the thought police, ensuring everyone is surrounded by informers who know them intimately.
So their brief sanctuary in Mr. Charrington's room is this desperate attempt to restore normalcy. a temporary illusion of safety and permanence outside the party's gaze.
Absolutely. That room in the Prole Quarter represents the pre-Ingsoc past. It has historical relics like the 12-hour clock and that beautiful, useless glass paperweight with the coral fragment inside.
The paperweight symbolizes their life, fixed in a sort of eternity at the heart of the crystal.
And the memory of the oranges and lemons rhyme, which is partially remembered by Mr. Charrington, Winston, and later Julia, is a shared attempt to reconnect to a common, shared, private past that existed outside the party's control.
They believe that as long as they stay in that room, they're safe because the proles aren't under surveillance. But Winston knows, deep down, that their fate is sealed.
He knows.
The fact that their love is temporary is the ultimate unacknowledged truth, and that the ministry of love Minilove, the ministry of torture, is their predestined horror preceding death, as surely as 99 precedes 100.
And the trap is sprung with surgical precision. The sources describe the devastating irony. The very moment they're gazing down at the prole woman singing in the yard, a woman whom Winston, in a flash of philosophical insight, recognizes as beautiful in her stolid, unconquerable humanity and fertility.
The voice of the telescreen, hidden behind the picture of St. Clement's Dane, just says, "Now we can see you."
Their tiny, private world, symbolized by that fragile coral, rolls across the mat, and the coral is shattered, revealing how small and fragile their rebellion always was.
And the man who set the trap, the man who Winston believed was a secret intellectual rebel and a potential co-conspirator, Mr. Charrington, transforms instantly into a terrifyingly efficient thought police operative. The illusion is just gone.
It is. The conversion of Charrington from a kindly, nostalgic shopkeeper to a ruthless agent of the state is the ultimate confirmation that trust, privacy, and independent reality are impossible. And that realization takes us directly into the intellectual core of the book, the final destruction of the individual mind by O'Brien.
The deep dive into the ministry of love led by O'Brien finally answers Winston's question that has haunted him since the beginning. I understand how W. I do not understand WHY. O'Brien isn't just an interrogator, he's the ideological engineer of absolute power.
And the initial shock is O'Brien's revelation. He was never a rebel. They got me a long time ago. He's the ultimate practitioner of doublethink, maintaining this terrifying sincerity even while torturing his prisoners.
Yeah, the sources emphasize that the torture in Minilove is not for extracting facts. Those are mere formality. Winston confesses to everything, real and imaginary, within hours.
The torture is purely for conversion.
And this is what sets the party apart from every historical tyranny. Past persecutors left the heretic to scream on the way to the stake, satisfied with public obedience.
But the party isn't content with submission. They seek to capture the inner mind and reshape the heretic. They burn all evil and all illusion out of him. They make him one of themselves, a true believer, before they kill him.
O'Brien tells Winston that it is absolutely intolerable to us that an erroneous thought should exist anywhere in the world.
The party's power must be absolute, which means it has to include philosophical, intellectual, and emotional endorsement. If a single person locked in his mind truly believes 2 + 2 = 4, the party has failed.
So O'Brien just crushes Winston's naive assumption that power is merely a means to an end, like the good of the majority, or establishing some paradise.
He clarifies that the party's motive is purely power itself.
O'Brien's speech here is the intellectual peak of the novel. He states clearly and chillingly that power is not a means, it is the end. The real power is not power over things, but over men.
He just dismisses Winston's weak protestations of freedom and justice, clarifying that the world the party is preparing is one of victory after victory, triumph after triumph after triumph, and endless pressing upon the nerve of power.
He describes the future as a boot stamping on a human face forever. This pure nihilistic definition of power is what Winston could never have conceived of while working back in Minitru.
And that leads to the philosophical destruction of external reality, O'Brien's masterclass, forcing Winston to admit the party's collective control over truth.
And we're talking about the infamous demonstration of control. How many fingers am I holding up, Winston?
O'Brien wants Winston to see 5 fingers, even if he sees 4, because whatever the party holds to be truth is truth. O'Brien explains that reality exists only in the mind of the party, which is collective, immortal, and infallible.
So Winston has to execute an act of self-destruction, giving up his personal senses and his empirical data, humbling himself before the collective mind.
And when Winston struggles, O'Brien subjects him to pain, until Winston confesses that yes, he sees 5 fingers, But that's not enough.
Because seeing 5 fingers while knowing there are 4 is still resistance. The goal is to make him truly believe there are 5, or at least believe the collective belief is superior to his own biological sensation.
Absolutely. O'Brien crushes Winston's last feeble hope, the idea of an immutable human spirit that will eventually rise up. When Winston returns to the attack saying, "I don't know, I don't care, somehow you will fail, something will defeat you, life will defeat you," O'Brien dismisses this instantly.
He argues that the party is the master of life and nature.
O'Brien says, "We control life, Winston, at all its levels. We create human nature. Men are infinitely malleable." He reminds Winston that the heretic must always exist, screaming, humiliated, and ultimately penitent to fuel the party's power complex.
The drama of conversion will be played out over and over again, generation after generation, always in subtler forms.
So the party ensures its permanency by eliminating the possibility of martyrdom. You can't die a hero, you can only die a fully converted, repentant lover of Big Brother.
They ensure the spiritual death precedes the physical death.
But even after weeks and months of torture and indoctrination, Winston retains one final, private, sacred spot: his love for Julia. He had held on to the belief that they can't get inside you, that while they could torture the body, they couldn't alter genuine feeling.
And this final sanctuary is where the party deals the definitive blow, in Room 101, which contains the worst thing in the world.
And Room 101 isn't a standardized torture room. It holds the specific, personalized horror that the individual fears most. For Winston, this is rats.
O'Brien confirms they're carnivorous. They attack the helpless.
When the cage of starving rats is fitted to his face, the pain and the visceral terror are so profound that his last emotional barrier just collapses. He screams, "Do it to Julia, not me, Julia! I don't care what you do to her."
That moment is the true internal defeat.
It is. The feeling that he had wished this ultimate horror upon Julia kill something inside him, the feeling is burnt out, cauterized out. He has sacrificed the last vestige of independent loyalty and emotional truth in exchange for his own survival.
And the sources note that when he finally sees Julia again, the betrayal is confirmed mutually. Her body feels rigid and awkward to handle, more like stone than flesh.
They had each betrayed the other, achieving the final psychological objective of the party, proving that even the strongest intimate bond is secondary to the fear of death, and that every individual is ultimately alone before the power of the state.
The final victory is psychological absorption. In the Chestnut Tree Cafe, a restored Winston, having gained weight and received a new set of teeth, sits tracing in the dust the equation 2 + 2 + 2, 5.
He accepts everything. The past was alterable, the party was always right. He had achieved the ultimate mental check by consciously reasoning out what it must be, not automatically. The phrase "he loved Big Brother" is the final, terrifying testament.
He didn't just submit.
He won the victory over himself and learned to love his destroyer.
The horror isn't just that he was tortured, but that the torture successfully changed who he was, making him an agent of his own destruction and conversion.
Even after that bleak, total conversion, there is a curious structural element to the novel that suggests the faint, lingering possibility that the party's architecture of omnipotence might not last forever.
You're talking about the appendix, the principles of Newspeak.
I am. It seems like a dry, scholarly analysis just tacked onto the end of a terrifying novel.
So what makes it so significant?
Well, Thomas Pynchon, in his introduction to the book, notes that the appendix is written consistently in the past tense, using phrases like, "The purpose of Newspeak was not only," and "it was expected that Newspeak would have finally superseded Old Speak."
This grammatical detail is monumental. It hints at hope, doesn't it?
It does.
If the author is writing in the past tense, it means the system he's describing is no longer functional.
Precisely. The past tense implies that the anonymous author of this scholarly essay is free to discuss Newspeak critically and objectively, meaning the language itself did not last that long, let alone triumph.
So it suggests Newspeak did not become general by 2050 as planned.
And that the ancient humanistic ways of thinking inherent in standard English have persisted, survived, and ultimately prevailed. The sources suggest Orwell, writing in another context, believed that slavery is no longer a stable basis for human society.
It provides a necessary subtle break in the relentless pessimism, suggesting that the human desire for linguistic and intellectual freedom embodied by Old Speak may ultimately endure, even if Winston himself did not.
And that enduring quality is why the mechanisms Orwell detailed remain frighteningly relevant decades later. The novel was written against Stalinism and Nazism and its core strategies: continuous war, information falsification, control of language, omnipresent surveillance, speak directly to modern concerns about information wars and digital control.
Let's integrate those modern parallels the sources discuss. Orwell detailed the analog, clunky surveillance of the telescreen, but the idea of total control has only grown exponentially more feasible.
Indeed. Pynchon noted years after the book was written that while Orwell didn't fully foresee religious fundamentalism as a major global factor, he did note that the technology has steadily and insidiously improved.
Developments like the internet, which can track every movement, every purchasing decision, every verbal exchange.
They promise social control on a scale those quaint old 20th century tyrants with their goofy mustaches could only dream about.
The struggle to maintain objective reality, what we see and what we know to be true, has now moved into the digital realm. But the core philosophical attack remains the same. The attempt to enforce a collective solipsism, where reality exists only in the party's mind, or the mind of the ruling power.
The book's genius, which we've dissected today, is that distinction between how the party rules, through deliberate deception, managed scarcity, and physical violence, and why they cling to power.
For power itself.
For power itself, which requires the destruction of mental independence, the control of language, the ability to destroy the concept of free, is the ultimate tool for achieving that philosophical omnipotence.
And the psychological absorption of Winston underscores this. The party understood that if they couldn't achieve true reality control over the external world, they had to achieve psychological control over the internal one, ensuring the individual destroyed his own ability to think independently and embrace the required lie. What an incredible deep dive into the architecture of absolute power, the mechanics of omnipotence, and the terrifying precision of Orwell's vision. The lasting lesson for you, the listener, is not just about Big Brother's face on a poster, but the constant internal struggle to maintain objective reality and individual thought.
This exploration really reveals the precision of Orwell's critique. It wasn't just about big government. It was about the deliberate, systematic destruction of mental independence through the fusion of information control, linguistic limitation, and psychological manipulation.
That distinction between the mechanisms of power and the pure, terrifying motive is the book's genius.
It truly is.
We hope this exploration gives you plenty to mull over, specifically that connection between universal scarcity, sexual repression, and ideological frenzy, and the importance of hanging on to objective reality, even when you feel like a lunatic, a minority of one.
And always remember that the control of language is the first step toward the control of thought. The moment you lose the words for freedom, you lose the capacity for the idea.
If you are looking for a shorter visual summary of the book's core insights, we invite you to check out our accompanying mini explainer. Until next time, keep questioning what you read.